Video time. Hey there, Coach Key here, and I'm your food and body love coach. In today's video, I'm going to share 7 steps to bounce back and recover from any binge or when you've overdone it with food. For the best advice on how to beat binge eating, stress eating, emotional eating, so that you have the relationship with food that fuels your life, subscribe to my channel and you'll be notified when I post a video every other Sunday. So last week I shared more about my own experience with struggling with binge eating and overcoming it, as well as my tips to start healing your relationship with food. So I know from firsthand experience what it's like to feel that shame and guilt after a binge. And in seeing my clients also struggle with this, it really inspired me to create this video today. Perhaps it goes something like this. Do well all day long. Perhaps you have your green smoothie in the morning, you have salad for lunch, you have raw carrots and apples for snack. And then when you come home, there's like something that just strikes where you find that you have to go immediately to the fridge and get your Haagen-Dazs, plunk yourself on the couch, and you find yourself eating and eating and eating and feeling like you can't stop. Or for some other people, like for some of my clients, I find that they do well all week, and this tendency to want to overeat happens on the weekends. So they do well all week, eating cleanly, as a lot of them like to call it. And then Saturday comes, and because there's less structure and less schedule, they find themselves just munching all day and eating all day and feeling really bloated and angry at themselves for undoing the good deeds, the good eating, quote unquote, that they did all week. So whatever pattern shows up for you, whether it's one of those or anything else, I want you to know that it's perfectly okay. And one of the skills then that I would recommend that you start with is learning how to bounce back quickly from a binge. Because one of the saddest things I've seen from my own experience and from other people's experience is that a single overeating session can kind of spiral into days of overeating, to weeks of overeating, to months of overeating, to years of overeating and binge eating and feeling out of control with food. Whereas if you can learn to catch it as soon as possible and bounce back as soon as possible, a single overeating and binge eating experience is not really going to cause you that much pain. So step number 1 is to hit the pause button as soon as you recognize you are feeling overwhelmed, powerless, or mindless with food. So that can be right before you eat, the eating experience. It could be during it, or it could be after it. Just pausing, even if you have a chip this close to your face and you're about to put in your mouth, just pause and hold your ground. Because what you can do is just take a couple deep breaths there and start to just observe yourself in the moment. And really start thinking about slowing down what you're doing. Slowing down, like even if you don't completely stop what you're doing, slowing down as you walk towards the fridge, or slowing down as you're putting the food in your mouth. And by pausing, we're starting to make space, we're starting to observe ourselves more, and we're already starting to break up that pattern of it being an automatic behavior because we are starting to observe. So step number 1 is to pause at any point where you feel like you are starting to get out of control or powerless or helpless with food. Step number 2 that I recommend for you is to forgive yourself. To recognize you're a human, to recognize you're not going to get it perfectly, to recognize that you're doing at any point in time, you're doing the very best you can. And I've often find that when we don't do this, the guilt, the shame starts to settle in, and oftentimes that can cause people to binge more because they are trying to escape the feeling of feeling guilty and ashamed. So one way I like to practice forgiveness is to have my clients recite the Hippopotamus Hippopono prayer. I am saying that completely incorrectly. Hippopono prayer, which is to say, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. So repeating that to yourself a couple times can help you get into the mode of forgiveness, of self-compassion, and realizing that at any moment you are doing your very, very best. So step number 3 is to hydrate. That's right, drink some water. So when you're bloated and feeling stuffed after a binge, perhaps drinking or consuming anything is the last thing you want to do. But water is actually going to help with moving and getting rid of that bloating and indigestion. Water can also help with dehydration, which sometimes people tend to confuse with cravings. So hydrate, give your body what it needs so that it can process and digest and get back to its natural state of well-being. Step number 4 is to get some gentle, self-loving exercise. And I have a real big caveat here with exercise because the mindset makes a big difference. When I used to struggle with food, exercise was the way I would control calories. It was the way I would, punish myself anytime I overate. And I strongly advise against that because it creates this negative mindset with exercise where it's all about punishment and burning calories and coming from the same attitude of beating yourself up, where from my own experience, that has never worked to heal my relationship with food. I also haven't seen it help heal the relationships with food that my clients have. So step 4 then is to think about gentle, loving exercise that feels good to your body and is going to aid with digestion. So perhaps if you enjoy walking, go for a walk, or some yoga, or some dance, or something that's just going to feel really good to move with the mindset of loving, soothing, and caring for yourself after this episode. So step number 5, don't starve yourself, but do wait until you're hungry again to eat. So a big mistake I made, and I often see with my clients, is that after a binge, they think, oh no, I ate so much food, I'm just going to not eat for the rest of the day, and then that will help me make up for the calories. So this is kind of the same lines of punishing yourself because you overate. And what so often happens is because they restrict their food and they starve themselves, you know what happens when you're really, really hungry? Your body wants the fattiest, most calorie dense, most junkiest food ever. And we tend to reach for things that are going to be junk foods if we starve ourselves. We'll reach for things that are easy and close to us. So instead of starving yourself, which sets you up for another binge, really tune into your body. Like I said, gentle exercise, hydration. Give your body a few hours. It might take a little bit longer, maybe like 6 to 7 hours before you're hungry again. But when you feel that hunger, pay attention to it and let yourself eat and fuel yourself so that your hunger levels and satiety are more even rather than this binge eat, going the wrong way, binge eat and then restrict and starve, and binge eat and restrict and starve. We want to keep things more even keel. Step number 6 is to get curious. Because what I've seen in my own experience and in the experience of my clients is that beating yourself up and willing yourself to change doesn't result in the changes we want, especially if you try that many times. So getting curious as to why the binge happened can be really, really powerful so that you can learn from the experience. So maybe if you notice you came home after a long day and you were going mindless with food, perhaps food was serving a purpose to help you disconnect from work, to help you turn your mind off. Or maybe if you find yourself binge eating on weekends after doing well all week, perhaps we have to look at what is that serving for you. Are you having a fun on the weekends? Do you have things to look forward to on the weekends? Are you feeling really deprived during the week and that's why you just want to eat everything on the weekends? So getting really curious is key, because you'll start to find out what need is binge eating or emotional eating filling for me. And if I don't want to do that anymore, what can I do to meet the true need underneath that? So that brings me to step 7, which is to get support. And there's a quote I want to share from Dr. Brené Brown. If you put shame in a petri dish, it needs 3 things to grow exponentially: secrecy, silence, and judgment. If you put the same amount of shame in a petri dish and douse it with empathy, it can't survive. So I know from my own experience, when I struggled with food, I felt like I couldn't tell anyone. I was so ashamed. I felt so alone. And frankly, it was one of the biggest mistakes I ever made, because I felt so alone, and like I was the only one struggling with this. It pretty much exacerbated the problem, where I would use food to even cope with the loneliness. So especially if you struggle with binge eating, especially if you're having these episodes of stress eating, emotional eating, I really highly encourage you to get support, to get someone that's going to be a trusted advisor, or maybe a friend who can give you a listening ear, but to give you that empathy so that you can release that shame and guilt and know that you're perfectly okay. You're gonna figure this out. I know from my own experience, I ended up working with a coach, and that was one of the best decisions I ever made, because I not only did I get the empathy and support, I also got a lot of the mindset and other tools that helped me finally overcome binge eating for good. So I highly recommend find some support. And of course, if I can be a support resource to you, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. My contact information is below for one-on-one coaching, as well as my group coaching program. So now you know my 7 steps to bounce back quickly from a binge or when you overdone it with food. So one more thing I want to share with you: if you'd like a copy of a free food journaling template that I often use with my clients, check the description in the video below on how to get a copy of that. It'll really help with step number 6, which is about getting curious and learning from the episode, the experience. So which tip resonated most with you? I would totally love to know. So please leave me a comment below so that I can hear about your thoughts about this video. And if you like this video, please hit the like button, please share it with a friend, please subscribe to my channel so that I know to keep making videos like this for you in the future. With that, I want to say stay well, eat well, and savor all that life has to give to you, because life is simply too short not to. Peace. Bye. Hey there, Coach Kia here, and I'm your foodie